Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shoptalk. Recently, we've had a lot of questions about passkeys, and so I thought now would be a good time to take a look at what they are and whether you should be using them. Passkeys could revolutionize online authentication, offering a bold alternative to the password mess that we've endured for decades. With cyber threats escalating and passwords proving increasingly vulnerable, the question isn't just whether you should use passkeys, it's whether you can afford not to. But are they as safe as promised, and what's the catch? Let's dive into the nuts and bolts to help you decide. So what exactly is a passkey? Well, at its core, it's a cryptographic credential tied to your device. Think your smartphone, your laptop, or even a hardware security key that you plug into a PC. Unlike passwords, which rely on something that you know and that you can forget or leak, passkeys use a public-private key pair based on standards like WebAuthn and FIDO2. The private key is securely stored on your device, never leaving it, while the public key is shared with the service that you're logging into. When you authenticate, your device proves it holds the device's private key without transmitting it, typically using biometrics like a fingerprint scan or facial recognition or even a PIN. And this setup is backed by heavyweights like Google, Apple, Microsoft, and the FIDO Alliance, ensuring broad industry support. So why are passkeys gaining traction? Well, passwords are a security nightmare. Studies show that most people reuse passwords across sites, and I do this myself on unimportant sites, and it makes you easy prey for hackers. Phishing scams trick users into handing over their credentials, and data breaches expose millions of passwords annually. Passkeys tackle these issues head on. They're unique to each service, so reusing them is impossible. They're phishing resistant because they're tied to specific domains. A fake website can't fool your device into using the wrong passkey. Plus, there's no need to memorize complex strings of characters, reducing the temptation to write them down somewhere or store them unsafely. Passkeys sync across your devices securely with cloud services like iCloud Keychain, Google Password Manager, or Microsoft's ecosystem so that you can log in seamlessly whether you're on your phone or a new laptop. Now let's talk safety because that's the heart of the matter. Passkeys are designed with security first. Since the private key never leaves your device, it can't be intercepted during transmission, unlike passwords sent over poorly secured networks. In a phishing attack, a fraudulent site can't use your passkey because it's cryptographically bound to the legitimate domain. Even if a service's database is breached, stolen public keys are useless without the private key, which remains locked away on the device. In 2025, with ransomware and sophisticated cyber attacks on the rise, this resilience is critical. Passkeys also leverage your device's secure enclave or trusted platform module, the TPM, adding hardware-level protection. For example, Apple's Secure Enclave ensures biometric data never leaves the device, making unauthorized access nearly impossible. So should you use passkeys? Well, if you prioritize security and convenience, the answer is a resounding yes. Start with high-value accounts like your email, banking, or your Google Cloud storage, where passkeys are supported. They're a massive upgrade over passwords, slashing the risk of phishing and breaches while simplifying logins. For tech-savvy users, passkeys are a no-brainer, and even less technical folks will still find them incredibly useful. However, don't ditch your passwords entirely yet. Keep a password manager for unsupported devices and ensure that your devices are secure with strong locks and up-to-date software. Backup recovery options like secondary devices or codes to avoid being locked out. Looking ahead, passkeys are poised to dominate eventually. As more services adopt them and cross-platform syncing improves, the transition will feel less like a leap and more like a natural step. In a world where cyber threats evolve daily, passkeys offer a rare combination of cutting-edge security and user-friendly design. They're not perfect, but they're as close as we've come to ditching passwords for good. Embrace them now, and you'll be ahead of the curve safely. So, with that, let's jump into our second question, for which I will cut to Glenn, our co-host. Glenn's going to join me now. What have you got for me today, Glenn?
Oh, we're going to jump right into that questions that coming from that episode you did on the Windows 10. You need to do this now, a whole bunch. And the first one here is it came up a couple times from Pegathy2. It was one of the people. If this was a Windows 10 install, why did it say Windows 11 when it was installing?
Yeah, good catch. So when you're doing the Windows 10 download, install, media creation, ISO, and the whole deal, Microsoft tries to nudge you towards Windows 11 pretty frequently. So if you're not careful and you click on the wrong thing, it will kick you into a Windows 11 install. And while I was doing some screen recording, this happened to me. And so I was recording the bits for the episode, and I got the first half, which was all Windows 10. And then in the middle of the video, you'll see Windows 11 because there's nothing actually happening except the progress bar. So I didn't reshoot that part. But then you'll see me at the end back to Windows 10. So it goes Windows 10 and then a little Windows 11 and Windows 10 on the end. So good catch. It doesn't change the flow at all.
Okay. Next one here, Dave. Major confusion. It says, to get started, you'll first need to have a license to install the Windows 10?
Yeah, you'll need a key to activate it for sure.
Okay.
I presume if you're running Windows 10 now that you already have a license and are activated, and that's why you want to continue running Windows 10. It wasn't a piracy tutorial, of course. It was how to get the, the authenticated bits so that you can install with your key later. Now, will you always be able to reactivate? Well, you can still activate XP, so it's going to be a while before you can't, because the clearinghouse can handle keys of all different types. And I'm pretty sure you'll be able to activate for quite a while, but there's no guarantee. So.
And then Twiddler 5593 said, so if you have to reload from scratch, you'll need your license key.
Well, not to reload, but to reactivate for sure, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, right. Yeah, loading, it's fine. Activating, it's a different thing.
Right.
Duke Nukem, he says, I don't get it. Why does Microsoft allow you to download a free copy of Windows 10? He says, if this is to back up your existing information, don't you have to have a license number or something? He said, nothing like that's mentioned in the video. So again, the third sort of.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of self-explanatory, that licensing and access to the bits are two separate things. So I wasn't talking about licensing.
And then along the same lines here, I think Ed Veoli says the ISA download link seems to be redirecting to a page requiring an installation license. Is he missing something?
No, I don't think so. So since I originally recorded it, which was about a week and a half ago, they seem to have taken the ISO direct download, which you can see in my video. I think I actually show it in the video, but it's gone now. So, but you can still use the media creation tool. So you create or you download and run the media creation tool, tell it you're doing it for another PC, pick the ISO option, for the USB key, whichever way you want to go. And, but if you want to pick the ISO option, you should be able to do it there and still get it.
Yeah, and we had a few folks again piping in about that, the ISO not being there and the Windows creation tool. So again, the DG from NL, I'm assuming he's from Newfoundland, said that it can't be downloaded. You have to create it with the creation tool. Is that the same thing? So yes. And then Ruby Maki, will the Windows Media Creation tool still work after October?
Yes.
Okay. And then another question says,
if you can get it. Now, if it has to download the ISO from that point, there's no guarantee of that. So will it work? I mean, the thing will run, but will it still be able to get the bits for you? That's another question. And that's why I'm encouraging you to save them now.
Yeah, you want to use the Windows Media Creation tool now before October to download.
Yeah, don't just save the tool.
Right. You need
Don't save the tool and run it in December.
Yeah, and there's a range of folks on here, especially I think with that topic that got a lot of people's attention, especially some of these, for sure, some folks that are still dependent on Windows 10 and not moving up because their machine can't make it. This is going to be a real concern to them, and they're probably, many of them are at the less comfortable end of this computer technology stuff, so they'll be quite curious about this stuff and need a bit more direction, I think. The other thing that Ruby also pipes in says, if you lose the USB or it somehow got corrupted, that would be a concern. So wouldn't having it on your desktop be handy, and then you can't lose it?
Well, if it's on your desktop and your computer crashes, you can't get to it anymore. So you might want to keep another copy on your desktop or somewhere so that you can make fresh USB keys if you need to. But I would always keep one or maybe two USB keys with it around if you're dependent on it, for sure.
I guess if you have two computers, you can have a copy on each desktop, and then assuming you only lose one at a time, you'll be fine.
Yeah, you might get lucky.
You might get lucky. Oh, yeah. I don't have luck with that stuff. CVVV. Again, he was unable to find it without the media creation tool. We've covered that one. He says, and then the Silver Down says, what about the activation part? Will that still work on a new install after support ends? Yeah,
for a while, for sure.
Okay.
I can't prove it, but it's an absolute guarantee. It's a lock, people. Dave said it. No, I'm assuming it will last for quite some time. How long? I could not tell you, but I got the sense it'll be a while. A lot longer than you'll be able to get the media. You'll still be able to activate old media.
Okay. And then another one here, so P3 Aster says, good reminder to get things up to date. Their PC has a processor that's not supported for Windows 11. So if I'm downloading the ISO file from Microsoft website, it did not go directly, so I had to use the media creation tool. When setting up Rufus, it complained about a UEFI bootloader that could be causing a security violation screen that was used and suggesting more up-to-date version of the ISO files needed. Is there something more up-to-date than downloading it from Microsoft?
No, that's the best you can do. So what it is Rufus checks to see if the key that authorizes the UEFI bootloader that's built into the ISO is valid. And what it finds is that, yes, it was valid, but it's been revoked as now being unsafe. And the reason is that UEFI bootloader is susceptible to the Black Lotus UEFI exploit. Doesn't mean it has malware, doesn't mean it contains malware. It just means that if you somehow got infected, that file could be infected, but it would also be signed. So I think it's a pretty safe scenario. I can't think of a situation where having that problem actually makes you less secure. I don't like it either because it's kind of a scary sounding warning. And why has it been revoked? And yes, it's vulnerable, but it's not infected is the distinction.
Okay. And then we got a few questions here sort of about updates. Aaron Play says, is it possible to create an ISO image from my current Windows 10 installation that has the latest updates? So he wants to create an ISO file with the latest updates they can get and then put it inside a Ventoy drive and boot from it.
There may be a tool to take a current Windows installation. I know there are tools to take an installation and snapshot it for a VM, which makes a virtual disk copy of your hard drive. And so you might be able to do something like that, but there's no easy way that I know of to go from here's my system, give me an ISO that replicates this system. Cool tool. If it does exist, please let me know in the comments if it does, because I'd like to know about it. But I think the best you can do is to back up an image of your machine, whether that's in an ISO format or backup format, or how you back it up is up to you. But
so then with that backup, you'd if you ran into a problem, you would reset up your machine with the ISO, and then once you've got it up and running again, you would restore that backup image, eh?
Well, the conventional path would be to restore from the Windows ISO and then restore your data, because having an ISO doesn't save your data in any way. So all your personal files are gone the moment your computer crashes, and they're gone the moment you reinstall over top of the system, and they're gone the moment you format the drive. So if you don't look at any of the things I covered in this episode as a backup solution other than to get your machine running again.
Right.
I think that's an important distinction.
Okay. UTBE999 says, also, is there a way to download the existing updates for future use? I guess if you're getting the latest ISO that has the most current updates?
No, just what's rolled into that current ISO. Okay. So if you get that ISO and then you find out there's 50 updates to install once you download that ISO, I haven't done a fresh install with that current ISO or checked this lately to find out. But if there's a whole ton of uploads that have to be applied to that ISO installation, then no, you don't get those updates. There's no way to save the updates offline that I'm aware of.
Yeah. So then Lesson and Denkin, is there a way to slipstream any updates into the ISO, or do you need to have them archived to install separately? Sounds like you got to have them separately.
Yeah. Now, if you're running 22H2 or whatever, then you're getting all the updates to that point, but nothing later. So yeah, there is no way that I know of to archive updates from Windows Update.
Okay. And then Richard and Kinkali, I think we covered this too. He said he tried the Rufus approach but got a warning. Then he tried to write the ISO to the USB stick that the UEFI certificate had been withdrawn, would produce a security violation. I should download a newer ISO without this problem. But is the ISO is the latest Windows 10 obtained from the installer shown?
Yes, there's nothing newer.
Yeah, there's nothing newer. That's it. Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Whether Microsoft fixes that at some point, replaces their UEFI bootloader with one that is not susceptible to the Black Lotus exploit, that would be the nice thing to do. But maybe they're just not putting that effort into Windows 10 at this point because, hey, that's old code. Of course it's susceptible. That's how it worked at the time. So,
yeah, if you need another reason to move forward. Moodberry, just to be clear, if I create this bootable file, does it also create an image of my personal files? No. That are outside my operating system. If not, what do you recommend to back up those files to? Yes.
I don't know what to use for Windows backup. I always use Macrium Reflect, and I like that package.
Sorry, what do you use?
Macrium Reflect.
Macrium.
Which I don't think is made anymore. I think they might still ship it, but it's not supported and upgraded. I've also used the Synology NAS backup, but the problem with it is I have found it very fragile when you go to do the restore process because you have to have the exact same version of the restore program that your backup was made with. And if they're like months apart, it won't even restore the data, which just blows me away. If you're writing a restore program, it's like the first thing it should ever handle is backward compatibility with prior versions of backups. But no. So
That's
I was
because
not
you
a
work
fan.
for Microsoft, though. Is that why? You're always worried about
Yeah, I got drilled into me, I
compatibility?
guess.
Apparently, yeah. Or obviously, yeah. Seattle Susie Q. Oh, someone in your neck of the woods. Why did you uncheck the BitLocker option when you're doing that Rufus setup? All the rest of the
I don't think
options
that
are
applies in
page-check.
Windows. Oh, BitLocker, I was going to say
Yeah.
TPM. But no, the BitLocker option I don't use unless I'm on a laptop. So I'm not too worried about somebody breaking into my house, stealing my PC, and I don't have unencrypted important files anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. But I do it on laptops.
That's because all your PCs are locked down at home, right? Just like they are in my office.
Well armed, well alarmed, all those things.
And you threw out the TPM one. That's the next couple of questions here. Bang Droid says, sorry, where was the option to disable the TPM?
Only in Windows 11. Sorry. As far as I know.
Okay.
But that's a Windows 11 option because it's not enforced in Windows 10 as far as I know. So.
Okay. And then Papa Bunny again. So there must have been something that says, hi, Dave, you mentioned Rufus will ignore the TPM requirements. Can it be used that way to install Windows 11? Which
Yes.
is yes, but not on Windows. Oh, Windows 10 doesn't require the TPM anyway. So yeah,
Right.
you're good either way. Yeah. Took me a while, but I got it eventually.
We'll get you
there. Yeah. Wow, I'm going to say this name just because it's ADH JKVS NGS MBB TQE.
All right,
There
then.
you go. Thank you. Sharing. So they're sharing it with their friends. The question is, does the Windows ISO work with Ventoy?
It should, yes. You'd get a copy of Ventoy and then update or replace whatever Windows ISO is in the default. If it comes, probably doesn't come with a Windows ISO by default. You have to get one, I'm sure. But
Okay. And then Laxalot says, you got any thoughts on Ventoy?
you know what? I set it all up. For the people that are not aware, it's a bootable USB stick that you can get a bigger USB stick and you boot into it. And then you can go from a menu and say, oh, I want to boot into my Proxmox install or my Windows install or my recovery software. Or I want to launch Windows 95. Or there's just all kinds of things you can start off with this USB key. And for that, it's great. But I always found that if I'm going to install Proxmox or Windows, I want the very latest bits, which would mean I would have to update my Ventoy, which means I got to download it anyway. So I might as well just burn it, not a disposable, but a used one stick and then throw it back in the drawer when I'm done. So I always grab fresh bits. And so because of that, I don't use Ventoy that much. If I was doing a lot of recovery and repair, I would find it more useful. But my recovery and repair is usually reinstall.
Yeah. Your tech support guy back at the office or something might want that. RHR 221B. Looks like he's got a question for a whole bunch of other folks, but maybe you can answer too. He says, with respect, dear Dave and fellow commentators, I have some important files, including my university dissertation, etc., or et al., sorry, that's not etc., and others. That's Latin. On floppy disk created using LocoScript, about 1993 in the UK. Not sure if you're familiar with it. It's got a floppy disk reader, but it just doesn't work. Converting those old files using my old Windows 10. He says, any pointers you can offer, please? I'm a young 74-year-old. Thank you, Rab.
No, if you've got a drive and it won't read the disks, you might be out of luck unless it's something weird like they were in a different disk format. So maybe in 1993, you had an Amiga. Well, you can't read those in a PC. You'd have to send them off to somebody with an Amiga, and there are services online that you can send Amiga disks to, and they'll copy the data off for you. Or, maybe Atari ST or some other odd format. Since I'm not sure what he created the disks with, biggest leap is going to be find what you created this with so that you can read those disks again.
Yeah, he says it's this LocoScript, which is around
I've never heard of
1993
that.
in the UK. Yeah, might be.
Yeah, so the UK had a whole different set of computers
Right.
than we did. By 93, they were on PCs, but...
Yeah, so this is maybe just pre-1993 then. When he said circa 1993, so yeah, it's probably more like 91, 92. So I guess, yeah, he's got to find someone with that LocoScript stuff, and probably he's going to find that local in the UK, not here in the US of A or North America.
Like the BBC Micro, which I always found confusing. Like, why is it named after the television network, the BBC? And I don't even know if it is, but it'd be like the PBS Peth over in America.
Yeah. I wonder if the BBC had something to do with the development of it or marketing? Or,
I don't know. I went into schools and I only have some rough knowledge of it.
Yeah. Maybe just a marketing partnership. that created synergy across. Kieran K01. He says, you go to all this trouble to tell people to create a Windows 10 boot disk and you don't tell them to test it? Shame.
Yeah, that's kind of my bad. I was scared of telling people to test it a little bit because I didn't want them to screw up their current machines. Because people go, well, I only have one PC, so I'll just test it on my PC and then wipe their machine and send angry emails to Dave. If you have a second PC or a scratch PC or for some reason need to wipe your PC, then by all means test it. You should at least boot it, but don't go wiping your hard drive and formatting and partitioning your system, unless you've got a scratch system or something to do it on.
Okay. Carrie N. Ball. Is there any advantage over this compared to just booting off an Ubuntu stick and disk drive the entire disk image into a portable disk drive? Apart from that, you need to buy a spare 2 terabyte drive, etc. So that way you've got a backup of the OS and everything else.
You have to know how to use Unix DD and back up a disk using Linux and all that kind of stuff. So if you're down with those things, then that is also an alternative you can take. But then when it comes time to restore, you've got to do the same thing and DD it back the other way and hope that you remembered everything.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll work.
No Beret. What size USB drive is needed for this?
8 is the minimum, but it's even hard to buy anything smaller than 16 these days. So
yeah, okay. There you go. Just that. Those things can run everywhere. Sam Uli Makonnen. Wait a second. In a video, Windows 10 is dead. What do you need to know? I get an idea that Dave is not willing to force installing Windows 11 into older hardware and was almost fear-mongering. And now we're going through Rufus installation method? Dave, are you starting to warm up to forced upgrades?
I have no opinion on forced upgrades because it's been 10 years. So on the one hand, I figure it's not really forced if they make you upgrade every 10 years and it's a computer product. The other thing is I was happy to upgrade to Windows 11. The start menu kind of sucks, but the rest of it is actually pretty good. And I know people have some pretty strong opinions on Windows 11, but I don't have any strong opinions on Windows 11 or 10. I'm not really partisan to either one. So I'm just going to run the latest bits at all times. So I've got all the greatest fixes.
And my employer, they just are in the process of upgrading everyone's machine at work to Windows 11. And yep, mine got updated a couple days ago, and there's a couple things that I was using regularly and viewing images and stuff and be able to pop up an image and it would take me right to the folder and I could go forwards or backwards, and it doesn't do that anymore. And it's frustrated the hell out of me. However, I'm sort of biting my tongue because if I get a minute or two, I think I can find a workaround for it and solve it. And it might be some things that my employer's locked down in terms of some admin responsibilities or setting default applications. But that's part of the process of moving to the new system. Stuff I like, stuff I don't like, things that used to work that don't. They're in different places, but I'll bear with it for a while before again, I think you want to be, for me, especially at work, it's easy to be on the latest, greatest stuff. Dare Coles. Oh, actually, let's go back to double J and then another John. Double D, JJ John. Thanks. Very informative, but shouldn't I just upgrade to Windows 11?
That is the simplest, safest path, yes.
Yeah. There's a hardware requirement for that, I guess, which is hanging up some folks, but yeah.
Yes, that's true. If you've got an old processor or no TPM, then you might have an old enough computer that it can't do it. So,
and then Derek Oles. Can you explain to us the romantic relationship between Microsoft and Intel? Why did Microsoft invest in dead-end technologies like the IA64 and 32-bit UEFI? And what about the recent fiasco where AMD Ryzen CPUs suffered significantly reduced performance on Windows?
Well, I mean, obviously Microsoft and Intel had kind of a duopoly back in the day when everybody was just on Intel chips and running Microsoft software. So it was symbiotic in the sense that probably what was good for Microsoft was in large part good for Intel and vice versa. It's easy to look back at IA64 and say it's a dead end technology now, but it's not like they said, hey, look at this dead end technology. Let's chase that.
Let's pursue it. Yeah.
Yes. So I think the problem with IA64 was it was an architecture that kind of had this thing where they said, our architecture is kind of weird and the instruction alignment is pretty funky, but the compilers will just make it work. And the compilers will do it all. And the compilers will be magic. And here's your chip. And the chips came out and they're like, but we're still working on the compilers. And then the compilers never caught up or delivered on the promise of what the architecture was promised to do. So they didn't find that out until late in the process, or later in the process.
Yeah. So and this Intel Microsoft thing, I've just, again, sort of got some recent news or so, and I haven't looked into it, but Mac is now ending their support for the Intel-based Macs. I think at the end of this year or something like that. So they're going there hard on their M chips and stuff as well. So
yeah, 2013 is my Intel Mac, so that's 12 years old. So, it's comparable, 10, 12 years. It's in that same range where they just go, yeah, time for a new computer, pal.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, well, back in the day again, what was it, 3 years maybe before you were going from your 286 to your 386, your 386 to the 486?
Yeah, sometimes even shorter cycles, but yeah.
Yeah, and the fact now, I got computer at home here. It's, mid 2011, like 13, 14 years. And it's pushed its limits, but yeah, I've gotten away pretty lucky being able to run a machine for a decade. UHF Station 1. Dave, you ever think of coming out of retirement to help them stop screwing things up?
Yeah, I keep waiting for them to back the money truck up at my house. Nothing's happened. I've been sitting on the front steps waiting, looking, nothing. And then I heard that Meta's paying like...
Would you have to take a car out of the garage in order to accommodate that money truck? Or you don't even have room if they back the money truck up, do you?
Well, it depends where I keep the money. If I keep the money in the shop and it's a lot of money, I might have to back a car out.
Yeah.
But,
sorry, I cut you off. You're talking about Meta or something paying.
Yeah, they're paying. I heard rumors, or Sam Altman implied, that Meta is paying up to $100 million for starting bonuses, not in stock, but in cash, for the right AI people. And I'm like, I wrote an AI that can play Tempest. That's got to be worth half that, right? That's the guy you hired for $100 million. Can you write an AI that plays the game Tempest?
Yeah.
So
mostly in it for the subs, likes, 500 million from Meta.
Yeah. If something comes along, I'll let you know.
Yeah. One of the goat here. He says about 1 minute into that Windows 10 episode, and he quotes you, "And no more free technical assistance from Microsoft." Wait just a second. Back up the truck. Speaking of doing that, how the hell do I get technical assistance from Microsoft? There has never been any way to contact Microsoft for technical assistance that I know of.
What? 425-882-8080. Call now. That is the actual number, so don't call now. That's what I used to do when I was, before I worked at Microsoft in the early 90s. I was working at IBM, and I was fixing PCs and setting up networks and stuff. And occasionally I would get stuck on something really obscure with Microsoft, and I never knew how to reach them, but I had some manuals that had a phone number in the front, and it was 882-8080, and it was a different area code. It was 206 at the time, I think. And so I would occasionally call, and if you ask for tech support, I know why I did, because there was an 800 version of it as well that I could use. And then they would transfer you to tech support, and eventually you would talk to a human, which was, I don't know what they did back in the early 90s for tech support, but there were humans you could talk to. So whether there still are, I don't know, but that's the phone number. So.
And you said area code 206. That's Washington,
that's 425.
Right? 206? Yeah. Because Saskatchewan's 306. That's why I always thought it was funny that, Washington was just I was thinking 360. I recognize that too. UHF Station 1. That's the guy. Eric O'Sullivan's got the last question from the Windows 10 episode here. Why does your video take 100% of my CPU? Not just yours, but some videos just eat CPU and some don't. It's weird.
I don't know, but I would guess that the reason is you're watching a video that is encoded in a format that your system can't use the GPU to decode. And so I bet, maybe you're in VP9 or some weird YouTube format for 4K, because I do 4K 60. It's got to process it on the CPU now, and it's taking all kinds of power. But you go to some other video that was MP4 and it's simpler. And I'm kind of waving hands and talking out of my butt here just to make up an answer, but that would be my guess, that the codec is doing a lot more work for that stream than for other ones that could be done on the GPU. Okay.
Now we're going to move to an episode, I think that went out on your Garage channel too, sort of, live recorded, I guess, the vibe coding one. That was a kind of a neat name. A lot of interesting feedback on that one, a little bit more range of questions. So Mike 209 says, vibe coding, more like stream of consciousness software architect coding. You deeply understand programming methodology, built and understand the architecture, and know what to change and where. A tech bro vibe coding knows none of those things and would be of no use in a project. Keep fighting the good fight, sir. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, I guess I meant vibe coding in the sense that I was using AI in order to generate a lot of the code and the fixes that I was then integrating into the code base. And that's kind of what I associate with vibe coding. I didn't mean I was starting a startup that was going to change the world. Pretty neat.
Shatterblade28 says, this was great, Dave. I was wondering what IDE you're using with Python. He says he uses PyCharm, but I was that. Oh, I thought that was cool. You have Sonnet built into it, I think is what he's trying to say there. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm using Visual Studio Code, and then I'm using the GitHub Copilot. Or is it GitHub Copilot? It's the Copilot extension anyway. And it allows you to pick from several different AIs you can use, and Claude Sonnet 3.7 and Claude Sonnet 4 and Gemini 2.5 and some of the ChatGPT 04 I think is in there. So it's got a lot of models that you can pick from.
Okay. And Justin Emley says, Claude Sonnet 3.7 appears to be a local LLM. 4 doesn't seem to be, or am I missing something?
I'm not using any of them as local. Gemma 2.5 is local. Gemini is the online model.
Okay. And then he also says, do you have API access to their online service?
I do for ChatGPT, but I don't know if I'm using it in that case. Okay. I have an API key for something, which I think is ChatGPT, but not in that case.
And I think you answered Shadowburn's 3D's question here too. What is your setup? Windows, WSL, and what else coding wise?
Primarily, if I'm doing, I'll either work on Mac OS, which is very similar to Linux because it's based on BSD, or I'll work on Linux under WSL2 on Windows, or I'll work directly on hardware on a Linux machine. So generally now I'm not coding so much to Windows for anything I do. I try to code to, I guess, what you would call a POSIX standard, and then I add special cases for Windows. So most of my code supports all the platforms, but I write it first on either a Linux or Mac OS, and then I adapt it to Windows. Because if you start on Windows, it's like impossible to then adapt it to Linux.
Okay. And he says, so are you paying a service fee to code?
I am subscribed to something that's $20 a month. I think that is the Claude.
Okay.
So Anthropic, I've got an Anthropic membership. Whether it uses it through Copilot, I don't know. I assume so.
Yeah. And then Typewriter Audio says, what is that VS Code theme?
Tomorrow Night Blue, I think is the name.
Tomorrow Night Blue. Wow. Yeah. And I'm colorblind. So we took the dog for a walk before we went out, or I took the dog for a walk with my wife, and the dog's got a new leash again. I knew the other one was pink. I'm like, what color is this one? Purple. Oh, okay. So now I know it's a purple leash. So I'm memorizing my colors.
You got a girl dog?
Yes. Yep.
Limited number to memorize. Probably pink and purple. Yep.
Yeah, that's sure. I go blue, but I'm wrong. So
I'll be a boy dog.
Danny Springer. Hey, Dave, any chance you can do something like this video for chess AI? Says he doesn't know much about how AI works, but at least he would understand something. Sounds like he's a chess dude. Yeah.
Well, here's the problem with chess AI. They've been doing chess AI for about 60 years. So it's very advanced. It's very complicated. It's very well thought out. They've had huge budgets poured into it back when Big Blue was trying to beat Kasparov or whatever the opponents were. And so some really big brains have thought really hard about chess and AI. So if I were to do anything with chess and AI, I'd be like, me, Dave, me help Tempest, Whereas I can do something new like Tempest and nobody's done it before, so it looks innovative. But chess is such a well-trodden path that I don't think I could add much to it.
Yeah, and you'd be just past the level of the horsey goes 2 forward and 1 over. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We talked about Justin the Claude Sonnet one. John Lawrence Poole, Lazy Sunday. He says at 1 minute 47 seconds in, your workstation shows AMD Ryzen Threadripper Pro 7995WX, 96 cores, 512 gigabytes RAM, and NVIDIA RTX A4000. So your AI processing is including the A4000, or is the activity in A4000 just for the multiple graphics display and memory and not for the logic and reasoning?
There are 2 Threadrippers involved. So one has an A4000 that's not involved at all. That's just the graphics card that's in that machine. It runs all the Tempest instances on an overclocked Threadripper. and it sends them to another Threadripper that has two A6000s that does the GPU inference and then sends the information back and forth over the network.
Okay.
So.
Right. Multiple 4000s doing two different things. Kenny JP. Hey, Dave, are you offloading any of the training to the GPUs, or is that ridiculous CPU sufficient?
No, I'm doing it all on the GPU. And in fact, the A6000 is about twice as fast for inference as or inference and training at the same time as the M2. So that's why I'm doing it on the Threadripper. Otherwise, I just do it on my Mac desktop, but I can't.
Right.
So, well, I can, but it's half the speed. So.
Yeah. Again, it's really designed for the GPU processing, Thor Johnson, can you evolve the AI instead of starting over? So he says, why or why not? And what are the ramifications? I guess you could have the whole reward in a switch if you wanted to refrain from or retrain from scratch in stages.
I don't know. It's something I've wondered about. Is if you change the reward function partway through, can the AI adapt, or should you start from scratch? And I generally start from scratch because I don't know the answer to this question. But my sense is that if you change the rules partway through, it'll work as well as the old information still is valid. So if the things you taught it in the first 50 million frames are still true, but now you're adding more information to the reward, I think that's fine. But if you're contradicting and changing rules that the first 50 million frames were trained on, then you're probably working counter to your own purposes. That's kind of my sense, and I'm not an expert on that, but that's my guess.
And that's something I'm still struggling with too. Every time you do these changes, you start over. I'm like, well, can't you accumulate this knowledge and just keep adding to it? And
yeah, but how do you know which parts of your old knowledge are valid and which parts are now completely invalid because you've changed the rules on it? So
right, that's where my little knowledge just falls off the truck and bonks its head.
And I don't know the answer either.
And then I start over. There was.
Oh yeah,
the other kind.
Yep, again.
I didn't do it as well as you did. What's the longest you've let any of your models run and continue to go before you've
4 or 5 days?
Okay. And the last 3.5 days of that are no progress.
Sitting on yellow. Yeah.
Okay.
You get to level 33.
Another 3.5 days, it's not going to make some breakthrough, right? But
that's my speculation. Yeah, I'm guessing not.
Okay. So. Okay. PDAXJJB. Dave, I'm really surprised at the complexity of your reward function. My experience with RL was back in the 90s after Jerry Tesoro published his classic paper, but at the time the wisdom was keep it simple, keep it results oriented. The desired result here is beat the level. The AI should figure out the rest. Of course, this makes learning really slow. I guess way too slow. Anyway, thanks for the eye-opening video.
Oh, you're welcome. I think, the problem is that the learning is going to be so slow. If you just say, here, optimize. If you live and get points, that's good. If you die, that's bad. That's going to be your basic rule. So live and get points. And you just turn it loose. It could eventually figure it out for sure. But it's going to take a lot longer. And Tempest is a very complex game. So if I was doing Pong, you could probably take the video output and the score value and crank it through with picture a 0-page memory and be done. And maybe I should have started there, but I started with a more complex game, so I had to take some extra steps.
Yeah, so back to, again, you did a lot of work and you've tried a lot of different things. But it keeps sort of stalling at that level 33, 34, right into the yellow levels. So is there, and again, I'm sure you've thought of this and you've done something. What's different at that yellow level that somehow it seems to have just stalled?
I think the gameplay strategy of aggression tempered by safety, which gets it through the first 30 some levels, is no longer valid. Once you get to the yellow levels, and for me, it's more the light blue levels. I can still play kind of aggressive myself on the yellow levels, but I'm pretty good at it. Whereas by the time I get to the next set, the light blue, now I'm playing pretty much defensively. Pick a safe spot, defend it, manage it, shoot the things that approach it. Don't go looking for trouble. And so I think I might have to write a new expert system that does something like that. And I'm not sure how to do that yet.
Yeah, the other option and question, and you're the guy to answer, is Or if that's the technique that works well in the upper levels, do you train it to have that technique all the way through, or will that make it less successful getting to the yellows?
No, I think it would still work. It would just be way more boring to watch.
Okay.
Because it's fun watching this thing rip through the first blue levels where it's just, I'm a mechanized killer and destroys everything.
Right.
And then it gets a little more cautious and then it dies.
So is this really about training the AI or entertaining you, Dave?
Well, it's for the AI to be trained to entertain me. That's what it is.
If it's not entertaining you, why would you spend your time doing it, right? It's got to be.
Well, yeah, imagine it discovered a cheat and it just sat there tapping fire going, I can play forever. That would be really boring. So I don't want that. Yeah. So somewhere in between.
Anyways, I'm just, I got to razz you when I get the chance. Bronco Fun says, shouldn't you be teaching the AI by playing the game and the AI watching you play and learning from you?
I could. Again, the problems I have there are I don't have a way to play the game on the MAME emulator with any amount of precision. I have a real spinner and I have a joy pack that allows me to capture the spinner data into MAME and everything else, but it's still not as good as the original game. So I can't play it at the same level. So I can't play the hard levels well enough to teach it. Plus I would have to play an immense amount in order to come up with enough training data for it to benefit from it.
Yeah, so I mean the number of times that you can play and the speed at which it can play with those 30 episodes going at 60 frame or no, how many? 3,600? Can't remember the number.
About 3,600 frames a second. Yeah.
Yeah, even if they're not playing quite as well as you, it's gaining way more knowledge from that than actually watching you.
That's my assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, we've assumed, or you have assumed a lot of things in this episode.
I've really disclaimed a lot of assumptions. We're on the edges of some of my knowledge here. So I'm like, I assume, I speculate, I'm guessing. But
that's where the hand waving starts, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's my head's 244895. How do you actually run Tempest? Do you own a copy of it? And is it available for free or otherwise online?
No.
Yeah.
So I took my ROMs out of my machine and read them in. And I mean, you can probably find them online somewhere. I'm not suggesting you do. I don't think it's, but
you're not publishing yours.
No.
Yeah. You're okay. You've got, I guess you own 3 sets of ROMs for that from your 3 machines, right? So
that's true. Yeah, I do.
You're well covered. Yeah.
I've got another spare motherboard too. So 4.
Ooh, wow. That's waving of the fingers. God bless CL. How many watts does the game training consume?
The CPUs or the GPU is at about 20% to 30%, and it's capable of like 500 watts. So probably about 150, I would guess.
Okay.
Plus
Mike
CPU,
Lackner.
but
plus CPU.
Most of it happens on the GPU. So
yeah. Mike Lackner says, should there not be both a pain and a pleasure instead of just a reward? Pain and pleasure are connected, but not the same in a human mind. In fact, one might have an action that raises both, and high pleasure might even bump pain, and vice versa, without any other input. Thinking tangentially to your project, my question is for AIs in general. Sorry, easily distracted.
Hurt me, baby.
You do have a incentive and disincentive, right?
I do. So we can have positive and negative reward values that add up, and you could wind up with a net negative reward value. He's being a little more philosophical in terms of pain also being pleasure. And in the AI world, I don't know. That's beyond me. But I do have negative and positive rewards. That's as far as I'll go on that one. So
okay. And the last question that we got for you, Dave, from that vibe coding episode, I think the question everyone wants to know, care of Matt Townsend. Did the tweaks work?
No. It might have got a little better, but not much.
Yep. So what's next for that model then, Dave?
Probably the new expert system, I think, will be the thing I have to do next, and program a cautious, survival-based expert system that it can learn from, and hopefully it works. I'm still working my way up to it, though.
That's all I got for you from the last 2 episodes on Dave's Garage and the last Shop Talk. So back to you, my friend.
Hey, thanks for joining us out here today. Please make sure you're subscribed to this channel because it's a very small channel. There's only 40-some thousand subscribers, and we appreciate you sitting here with us and watching our episode. But maybe tell a friend. Do whatever you can do. We need your help. Won't you give? I feel like, what was her name? Suzanne. Oh, from All in the Family. The girl, the blonde girl.
Oh, geez.
I can't remember her name now, but she was always pleading for
Archie and what did he call his son-in-law?
Meathead. That was Rob Reiner. I cannot remember her name.
Sally Struthers.
Yes, there you go.
Yes.
So
Ooh,
yes,
I knew if I delayed long enough, it was going to click. So I don't remember her character's name on the show, though.
I don't either. She cried a lot. I remember that. But rather than waxing philosophical about 70s sitcoms, we should probably wrap it up. So thanks for joining us out here tonight in Shop Talk. In the meantime and in between time, hope to see you next time right here on Shop Talk.